Yeah, I had my original unit that I used in Harrisburg and all the other shows. Harrisburg's a 9-day show. It's kind of like a marathon. Last year, over the 9 days, I did 2,506 falls over the 9 days. And that same unit I've used for about 2.5 years. I ended up doing over 8,600 falls with that one unit. Now, I do replace the webbing every 5,000 falls and the rollers about every 500 falls. But the cam, the top and bottom plates, all the bolts, they're original. The average hunter should never wear one out.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 237. Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus, Killing the Fall and Suspension Trauma. The Treestand Wingman. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Hunter's Blend Coffee. Awaken your hunt with coffee purchased directly from farmers around the world, creating jobs and alleviating poverty. Hunter's Blend Coffee, we're hunters too. Black Ash Outdoor Products. Reduce your risk of tree stand suspension trauma with the Treestand Wingman, the Treestand Emergency Descender System. The Enforcer. Take control of your odor footprint with your personal Ozone Generator. Covert Scouting Cameras. Remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. The Horny Buck Seed Company. It's all about the freshest seed. Morse's Sporting Goods. A full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbukregistry.com/MERCH. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Cameron Coble, the average Joe blue-collar bow hunter, and you're listening to my number one favorite podcast of all time, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Dr. Ken Nordberg. You're listening to my favorite podcast on the internet, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Shane Mahoney from Conservation Visions Incorporated, and I'm listening now to one of my favorite hunting podcasts, Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Play. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to j@bigbukregistry.com. Tree stand safety is a hot topic, and it should be. Studies show that tree stand accidents are by far the leader in serious injury or death to a hunter. There have been some major advancements in safety through the years compared to the days when the hunter would limb climb a tree into a wooden-built tree stand. The harness has also come a long way since the early days. The attachment straps aren't as limiting. Devices like the lifeline now keeps us attached to the tree. But suspension trauma, should you slip, is still a major concern. Wayne Borgardus has invented a device that's a game changer and addresses all these issues. The device is lightweight. It attaches easily to a tree or a lifeline, supports a hunter of the larger or smaller variety, works with any harness, can be used over and over, is affordable, and will safely drop you to the ground should you fall. Here's the story of the Treestand Wingman. We'll get to our entire interview with Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus of the Treestand Wingman in just one moment. But before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller for the deer news.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the deer news. Our first story this week are Maine moose shaking deadly ticks. This story is from the Outdoor News website. Maine biologists say that there are signs that the number of winter ticks on moose is declining. The Portland Press Herald reports that biologists are optimistic that the state will issue a similar number of hunting permits in 2018 as in 2017. State Wildlife Division Director Judy Camuso said that recent checks of moose showed the fewest number of winter ticks in the last 4 years. The parasite has helped decimate moose numbers in the Northeast in recent years. Through studies of collared moose, biologists have been studying what causes moose to die. Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife biologists will recommend the total number of moose hunting permits in March. Camuso told the department's advisory council that Maine's biologists won't know the full extent of moose mortality caused by winter ticks until May. Have you ever seen a vampire deer? This story is from the Clarion Ledger website and was reported by Brian Broom. When James Underhill from Caledonia, Mississippi, found a dead buck on the side of the road, it didn't seem all that special, but when he began cleaning the skull to mount it, he discovered something very unusual. What Underhill saw was an odd pair of teeth. They were located in the upper jaw about halfway between the molars and the front of the mouth. It was something that perplexed him. Looking for more information about the deer, which are sometimes referred to as vampire deer, he called a Mississippi Department of Wildlife Fisheries and Parks officer. The officer said it's pretty much like finding a doe with antlers, Underhill said. He said he gets calls about 2 or 3 a year. It's rare, but it does happen. Mark Harrington of Backwoods Skullmount said he found one in much the same manner recently. Harrington has been doing skull mounts for 12 years, and in that time, he said he's found a bullet in a deer's head with no visible wound, a deer with significant skull trauma that had healed, and one without bone in the roof of its mouth, but never upper canine teeth. Steve Demarius of the Mississippi State University Deer Lab explained the fang-like teeth. There was a study in New York on 18,000 white-tailed deer, and they found 1 out of 1,000 have them. You have to look at 1,000 white-tailed deer skulls to find it typically. Scientists believe that early species of deer had fangs that were used for fighting, and over hundreds of thousands of years they developed antlers for fighting, and the fangs disappeared. Delaware hunting bills await action. This story is from the Milford Beacon and was written by Christopher Kersey. Bills that could be considered by the Delaware General Assembly would legalize airbows and limit liability for donated deer meat. 2 state legislators have sponsored a bill to legalize airbows for hunting deer. Now illegal in Delaware, an airbow fires arrows using compressed air rather than pulling back strings. Representative Jeff Spiegelman, a Republican from Clayton, is the primary sponsor of House Bill 157, which allows the use of airbows for hunting deer in place of a shotgun during any shotgun deer season, according to the bill's synopsis. The bill cleared the Agriculture Committee last year, and it's been placed on ready list for voting by the full House. Senator Bruce Ennis, Democrat from Smyrna, is the primary sponsor of Senate Bill 117, which allows a pellet gun, airbow, and most other air guns to be possessed and utilized for hunting in Delaware, the bill said. The bill was approved by the Senate June 20, 2017, by 20 votes in favor. The House hasn't acted. The State Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control supports legalization of airbows for hunting deer to expand hunting opportunities and to better manage Delaware's robust deer population, said a statement from the agency. An organization online called Airbow Hunting provides a description of the weapon, its use, and beneficial attributes. The group is also on Facebook. The airbow is not a bow and it's not a gun, but instead uses an air rifle platform to fire arrows at high rates of speed. One new model on the market fires 26-inch arrows at 450 feet per second. The other legislation sponsored by Spiegelman is about people donating deer meat to organizations without fear of liability if something is wrong with the meat. The bill, which also makes the butchers immune from liability, is still being reviewed by the Health and Human Development Committee, and no vote has been taken by the House. It's been amended twice. Butchers under the contract with the department to process donated deer into ground meat are required by state law to meet specified liability limits. Some butchers have chosen not to participate in the program because of the costs of meeting the higher liability limits. Spiegelman represents House District 11, which covers southwestern Newcastle County and northwestern Kent County from the Middleton area to Townsend, Hartley, and Marydale. Ennis represents Senatorial District 14, which stretches from the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal and including most of the Middletown area to just north of Dover. For any of our listeners around Michigan, I will be at the Michigan Deer and Turkey Expo at the Lansing Center on February 17th. I will of course be sporting the stylish Big Buck Registry hoodie, so please stop me and say hi if you see me. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus of the Treestand Wingman. Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friends?
Very good, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I'm very interested to hear more about your product. I love your product. Obviously, we use it, and it's a fascinating invention. You know how you look at a product and you just, the simplicity of it is in front of you, but you're like, why didn't I think of that? But it works, and it works really well because I've tested it, and I'm not a small guy. It made me feel good in the stand. It got my mind off of that whole aspect of falling out of the tree stand that is always in the back of my head. Not that it shouldn't be, but it made me focus more on the hunt. That's what it came down to.
That's one of the biggest benefits of this product, besides the fact that it's going to keep you safe from a fall,
right,
is the fact that it's going to allow you to enjoy your hunt because you can concentrate on hunting and not worry about whether you're going to fall out of the stand or not.
Right.
So,
well, I can't wait to dig in here and find out who you guys are, where you're from, how this whole thing developed, talk about the intricacies of the product itself. Hear a good deer story here, Wayne, or SHAUNA, either one, whatever.
Yeah, it's her story,
or both. We could tell both.
I think if you're looking to find out about the product, the interesting story there is that Wayne invented this thing.
Yeah.
But he worked on it for 6 months, and I never knew that he was even thinking about this thing. I thought he was building a new climbing tree stand. So he had plans in the shop, and I'd seen blueprints for that, and I thought that's what he was doing. But that's not what he was doing.
All right, let's get into that story in a second. Let's talk about you guys. Where are you from, and where did you grow up?
Well, I actually grew up in Black Ash, Pennsylvania, which is just a little dot on the road. There's really nothing there. And I grew up there pretty much my whole life till we moved to Sagertown after we got married. But I'm a journeyman tool and die maker. I own a tool and die shop, and that's kind of where my background comes from, engineering and tool and design. So SHAUNA and I met. Actually,
I was working in a tool shop. I was selling parts in a tool shop, and that's where we met. He brought his dad in, who was also a tool maker, and he wanted a clock spring for a mill. And they came in and they asked for a clock spring, and I turned around and I grabbed one off the shelf and I set the box on the counter, and his dad picked it up and started opening up the box. And Wayne said, "You don't have to do that. She knows the right part." So he kind of got some brownie points for that. But
gotcha. Okay.
And then we started dating after that, and I think one of our first dates was going spotting deer.
Well, that's a good first day, Wayne. Good job.
Start them out right. Yeah.
Testing it. Make sure that's going to be the one.
Yeah, see if she was going to work or not.
I don't know if we're going to make it all the way through without Wayne getting cold cocked here.
Yeah.
Can you reach him?
I can reach him.
Oh, good.
I've got a long reach.
So Black Ash, that's where you grew up, is the basis for the name of your ultimate company.
The business, yes.
Yep. And Black Ash makes the Treestand Wingman.
Yes, that's correct.
Gotcha. All right. So tell me about what your hunting early life. Did you have a mentor or somebody take you hunting? Did you get into it because somebody taught you, or you self-taught?
Well, hunting for me was just something you always were going to do. I mean, my parents, my mom and dad both hunted. Every one of us kids hunted. And the first buck I got when I was 14, that fed the family for 3 months.
No kidding.
And that's kind of where it all started. Respect the wildlife, enjoy the hunting, but it's about feeding your family, and and that was really important to me to have seen that. And we had a family friend that was really instrumental in taking us hunting, and I've always hunted. I had uncles that hunted in Canada for moose, and they'd come back, and the one story was they had a moose in the back of the camper, and the horns were hanging out the back, and they showed up at my mom and dad's house. I remember going out and looking at that and seeing that big moose my uncle had got, and that kind of started wanting to, when I got older, to be able to do that.
That story is there that stick with you for a lifetime.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Was safety ever a factor back then?
No, and I was telling a guy here a while ago about my first tree stand. It was a little platform. I think it was a TSS.
Yeah.
Barely big enough for your feet, no harness, no nothing. And I used to hunt 30, 40 feet in the air. And back then, I didn't know any different. I didn't know I should be afraid of that. And so as I've got more and more stands, I had a Summit, and it came with a harness. And I think it was in the fall of 2013 when I first come up with we needed something better. In a story in our paper, a kid in the Midwest had fallen, like 20 years old, and he was injured, and he was on life support, and his sister made the decision to take him off, and he passed away. Mm-hmm. Well, like SHAUNA said, I was working on a prototype for a climbing tree stand, and I got to thinking, well, I don't want to bring a product out if people can die while using it. So I started looking into what was out there, and the more research I did, the more I was like, well, there's this lapse in safety, like the harness. If you don't, it's attached and you fall into that, you need to get out of that harness to get to the ground. And I didn't really realize that suspension trauma over 5 minutes is a big deal. Half an hour, it could be fatal. Right. The more I looked into it, I seen that there was a gap. So I started working on the project. My first invention had like 3 these are offset, the one we have now with a cam on it. My original one had 3 vertical things, and I thought, well, how fast could the webbing go through there? It can go pretty fast. It was like a vertical zip line, so it went pretty fast. And then I worked on it for about 6 months, and I couldn't quite get it right, and I put it away for a while. And then I think about 5-6 months later, I took it back up, and I got the cam figured out, and how that cam would work on there, and how how it is set for various weights, and how it worked at such a vast.
Okay. So gotcha. So when I had a climber, and I still have it. It was an API climber. And when I was younger, and I would climb like crazy. As long as you could find the right tree, you could put this climber. And it got me up really high, and I killed bucks and other deer using this mobile device, where I could go wherever they were, which changed. So if I could just find the sign, I'd set up, and it worked. But oftentimes, I think I got so involved in the moment that I might have had my harness on, but it wasn't attached to the tree, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I get up there, and eventually I might connect it. But if I think there's something coming through right away, that always became the last piece. So I put that away for quite a while. I stopped climbing. I had kids. Like, wait a minute, I really need to think about this thing again. Mm-hmm. Some of the chains got rusty. I stopped climbing, and I would use ladder stands. And even then, there was no mechanism to relieve yourself of suspension trauma. Exactly. Early on, and then they came out with a device that your leg harness where you can move your legs to keep blood circulating, but that still could keep you suspended. With your product, all that is forgiven. Yep. It's got enough tension so that it will keep you up there, and all you have to do is use your fingertips to keep you from falling any further, or you could just lower yourself to the ground. Mm-hmm. And my life, and I have to thank you, has changed because now I'm climbing again. Not only am I climbing with my old climber, but now I've gone even into small hang-on stands that I use with my sticks. My whole world of climbing trees has been opened up again. Right. And I'm talking to you from the son of a telephone lineman who used to climb telephone poles daily, and I was always, that's the most amazing feat I think I've ever seen. That looks fun. Yeah. So I love being in trees again. It's great.
Yeah. Well, for me, I grew up with a hunting family as well. My dad and my brother were hunters all through my youth. And, of course, I've always been horse crazy. So I did go out. My dad was a coon hunter, and we would go out with him at night and follow the dogs and that. And I did do a little bit of deer hunting. But what happened was I wound up married to a city man and didn't do much in the outdoors.
How dare you?
I know.
What were you thinking?
How silly, huh?
How dare you marry a city man?
Well, I wound up a single mother. And one night, my ex-husband called up, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm cooking supper." And he said, "What are you making?" And I said, "Well, we're having steak." And he said, "Where are you getting the money to buy steaks?" And I said, "I went deer hunting and killed a deer." And he said, "Oh, so now you're Rambo." And I said, "Well, whatever works."
You should have said, no, you're just Jell-O.
Yeah. Well, and this was a little before I met Wayne, so that's what my thing was. I hunted to put food on the table.
Right. Absolutely.
Right.
But during that time, I dated several different fellas, and we went out hunting together on different occasions, and I would be in trees without a harness, sometimes without a stand. I mean, I can remember actually sitting on a tree limb with a bow, because I had taken up archery at that point too.
Right.
And now as I look back, I thought all those guys liked me, and I think maybe they were trying to kill me. Because there's no way I would climb now without a harness, without a wingman.
Right.
And so when that came out, I was amazed at how silly I had been and how lucky I had been, because I never fell.
Right.
So
Yeah, for sure.
And the past 3 years, I've spent a lot of time talking to hunters and families of hunters, and it's amazing. Everybody has a story of somebody who fell, and some of them didn't make it. It's been kind of upsetting for me, particularly at times, because Wayne does demonstrations, so he's up in the air and he's doing the falls, and I talk to the people on the ground, and I hear the stories of, my son is a quadriplegic, my brother died, and somehow you have a little feeling of responsibility. Oh, if they'd only had a wingman, they'd be okay today.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for us to get this out there.
Right.
We know we can help so many people enjoy their hunts and stay safe.
Right.
So that's been the biggest challenge in starting a business.
Let's go to a little bit of the blueprint and how this all developed. Even go back to like conceptualizing why, though, the why. Like why? I mean, it's kind of obvious in a sense where you're trying to make things safer. But how did you hide the concept from SHAUNA for so long?
Well, I'm a pretty busy guy. I mean, I have a tool shop where I'm working doing that a lot, and blueprints are nothing to have them laying around.
Okay.
But, I just trial and error, working on different things, trying to make it simple, but something that was reliable and would always work. So, like I said, about a year worth of that, and then we did some patent work, and we're still going through a little bit of that, but just had to try it in all different kinds of weather, all kinds of situations, all these different falls, to make sure we had something here that could keep people safe.
There have been precursors to this concept. This is not people have been trying different things for a while, but they're either too expensive, too bulky, malfunctioning.
Well, that's the one thing I was going to say, is that the blueprint for the original Treestand Wingman doesn't really look all that different from the prints that he used for the parts that he was making for the automotive industry. That's why I That's why I didn't really pick up on that this was anything that wasn't a job for a customer.
Yeah. Right.
So I mean, obviously, when he was working on the concept for the stand, it had a little design in it that identified that to me as a stand, but the other part, the plates for the wingman, didn't stand out to me. So, and I do all the books and the paperwork for his tool shop, so the only clue would have been that these didn't go to any job number. But he keeps so many papers around, I just never noticed that.
Gotcha.
So that's the thing. And then apparently he was testing it in the barn when I wasn't in the barn. So that's how he got all of that by me for so long.
So the fact that you walk back in the house every night was a testament to, hey, things seem to be going well in research and development.
Yeah.
Did you, the way that I found out about this product was after I interviewed John Lauk from TMA. That TMA sticker, you see it everywhere, but I didn't think anybody really knew what it was for the most part. So I was like, what is this sticker and what does it mean? And I researched it some. I found John. At the end of that interview, he said to me, because I asked the question, I said, what are some of the innovative products for tree stand safety that you find appealing and interesting that may or may not be TMA approved or certified yet. He said the one that I think is probably the best is the one from Black Ash Outdoor Products, because that has more potential than probably any of the products that we've seen out there. But he also said that it wasn't TMA certified. And to clarify, that it doesn't have to be. And he said he wasn't sure why you would necessarily, because you're the only one that has this particular kind of style. You want to speak to some of the TMA stuff and why you might or might not want to have that sticker on there?
Yeah, John, matter of fact, I talked to John yesterday, and he's looking at developing standards for an auto descender.
Okay.
And once they have that, then the Treestand Wingman can be compliant. We basically went and tested it to all the standards that the harnesses have to do. And on 2 of the standards, they require that it holds you for 30 seconds. But because the Wingman automatically lowers you to the ground, we can't comply with that.
Right.
But it did lower the dummy both times to the ground safely, and which was stated in the testing. So it's just a matter of the wording, and we have to decide what kind of tests we're going to run with it to be compliant. The TMA just puts out industry standards,
right,
and you either comply with them or not. So
it's along the lines of OSHA.
Right.
They don't actually have a certification for a product,
right,
but you can find standards that your product would fit with and comply to those standards. And we've done that with a few of the OSHA standards so far as well. So the TMA is kind of the same in that respect, that they are a group that recommends or approves, but they don't certify anything.
Right.
So.
And as I learned in that conversation is that you have the TMA group, which is more or less a group of peers that hold each other accountable, and you don't have to belong to that group. It's not required, but those that do have had tree stands and other products that have been passed through a rigorous set of standards that is sent out to a separate entity to do the testing.
Yes.
And on top of that, you still have the government, which is different than TMA completely. They're not a government organization. You have the Consumer Product Safety Organization. So any products that are out there that for sale, for profit businesses that are selling products have to meet some kind of standards anyway. So,
but because our product is so unique,
right,
there aren't standards for it in any of these arenas right now, because everybody else wants to hold you up in the air.
Right.
We want to get you down to the ground.
Right.
So.
Right. That's well put.
Yeah, I mean, if you were having to slip and fall and knock yourself out on a metal tree stand, the Wingman's going to lower you to the ground.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Safely.
Yeah.
And if it lets you down and you lay sideways on the ground and you come back to consciousness, you're not still hanging a tree stand 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later. It's very unique. Are you going to stick with the hunting industry, or are you going to focus on other aspects of this product being useful?
Yeah, it's always going to be a hunting product.
Okay.
That's near and dear to my heart. That's what it was developed for. We are definitely going to be doing other avenues with it as far as industrial and things like that we're looking into. So there is going to be other versions. We're thinking about linemen and stuff like that too. Anybody in a bucket, cherry picker, anything like boom trucks.
I had thought about that because I mean the horror stories I used to hear from my dad and his coworkers.
Getting stuck up in one.
Yeah, getting stuck in a bucket. Yeah.
The scary part for the lineman is with a lineman's belt, if you have an accident and start to fall, the first thing that hits the pole is your face.
It pulls you into the pole.
Pulls you right into the pole.
Right.
Whereas with the wingman, you can roll away from it and be,
Even a limp body would, be away from it and
absolutely
your face.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. I laughed at that. I got a farming background, and we used to lower grain leg motors down into a basement pit.
Yeah.
If I had this, I'd be utilizing it to lower that motor into the pit.
Yeah.
Because, there's oftentimes you got a rope. You're trying to hold it in your hands. You put a 200-pound motor down the pit.
Yeah.
Well,
well,
you would have done it.
It was easy, and you could have had 2 guys down there to catch it once it lowered it.
Right.
Yeah. So there's different aspects of the tree stand.
Well, and the other thing is, if you think about silos, work with silos and that, we can make the webbing any length.
Right.
So you've got 75-foot silo.
Yep.
We could get you a wingman that's going to bring you all the way down.
Somebody that's working on putting up a grain bin or working on a grain leg. There's all different aspects of this product.
Absolutely.
Right? If you was going up a 100-foot grain leg, you had a 110-foot line.
Yeah.
It would take you all the way down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had a
This makes
story
sense.
that my dad told me. It was one of his coworkers had fallen off of one of the telephone ladders climbing up the pole, and he fell and landed on a spike. It went all the way through his body, impaled him, and came out his back. The guy lived.
That's amazing.
And went back to work. That's the crazy part.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but that never would have happened if he had had some device like this that just slowly lowered him down. Instead, all that action happening so fast, you can't make a decision.
No.
in
Wayne
less
had
than a
fun
second.
with a screw-in step once.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a limb break, and I was screwing steps going up. And luckily, when the limb broke, I got a hold of the stand and swung out. And I come back in and got scratched up. So
Yeah, they said those
happens.
screw-in stand steps are what do they call them? Gutters.
Gutters. They're
Yeah.
and
dangerous.
we've heard
Yeah.
stories of that
Yeah.
that I couldn't even repeat.
Yeah.
It just makes you cringe when you hear it.
Right,
Because
for
you
sure.
can just visually see it happening.
Yep.
Can we talk about the product itself a little bit more and describe in detail how it's maybe can't go into patents or anything like that. That's what I'm trying to get at. What does it look like? How does it operate? What are the mechanisms behind the safety fall that you conceptually put into it and the way it actually functions today?
Probably one of the first standards I came across was a fireman's fall. That requires on a 10-foot free fall that you have 15 pounds of protection for every pound of weight that you're going to have on the unit. So everything on the Wingman's designed, figuring a normal man for the max on the tree stands was like 300 pounds. So I needed 4,500 pounds of protection. So the webbing and everything in there is designed to withstand that. And during the OSHA and ANSI testing, it was over 5,200 pounds before failure. So we had that in there, and then we went to the TMA to have it tested. The first test was a 15-foot or a 52-inch free fall with a 220-pound dummy, and when they dropped it, it came down and lowered it to the ground. And Devin, the guy doing the testing, was over there looking at the harness. And I said, well, Devin, we're testing the Wingman, not the harness. And he said, well, that's a sewn-over lanyard. He said, those should have ripped out. Those rip at 500 pounds of force. So we went to the digital readout that he had there, and it was listing 387 pounds of force. So a 220-pound dummy, 2-to-1 would be 400 pounds. So we're designed for 15-to-1 protection, but we're only generating 2-to-1. So there's all that added benefit there of the product. We're not anywhere near max capacity for what this product can do.
Very good.
But like I said, I'm hunting with this too, so I'd rather have it extra strong and extra
Absolutely.
sturdy than on the margins.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, and what we're finding out too is that a lot of our hunters are a little bit more than 300 pounds.
The husky hunters.
Yeah,
The big guys.
the big guys. But
Beefy.
the
I'm sticking with husky.
husky. But if you've got a stand and a harness that are going to hold you, we know we're going to get you down. Okay,
Right.
It's just making sure that you have that stand that can support you and take care of you. We'll get you down as long as they can keep you up.
Yeah.
So
What did your workshop look like when you were screwing things into plates and had webbing all over the place? Was it a mess, or are you a neat guy?
No, not really a neat guy. It was part design. I would design something, I'd go out, machine it up, I'd test it and say, well, what would I do better? The cam was kind of the special recipe there that actually pulled everything together. When I came up with that kind of everything fit together and just a matter of tweaking things. But once that all came together, everything just worked fine with it. So,
All right. Very cool.
when you look at Wayne's shop, you kind of have to think of a mad scientist because that's how things look.
Right.
Well,
He knows where
what's
everything
there.
is,
Yep, I was getting
but
ready to say
I
that.
couldn't find anything in
And
there.
that's okay till something happens to Wayne.
yeah.
Right.
At this point, I have copies of all the blueprints and
That's good.
everything. As disorganized as he is, I try to be.
Oh, you
anal.
got to have
I
somebody.
mean, I try to keep copies of everything.
I go to grease a piece of equipment. I've got more stuff laying around than I ever would need.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some of the other statistics that you've heard out there? I know there was an article recently, like with the Wall Street Journal or something.
Yeah, the Wall Street, or no, it was the New York Times.
New York Times.
New York Times came out and they were talking about tree stand falls as the silent killer of the hunting industry. And they were talking about how many people had fallen in New York and how it's pretty much glossed over most of the time. People don't really talk about it. I mean, it's like a big dirty secret that nobody really wants to tell. Nobody wants to know that this the sport that everyone loves so much can actually be fatal without ever involving a weapon. You know, there's a big deal now about, you know, gun injuries or archery injuries, things like that. But they don't really talk about what happens if you fall out of a tree stand or if your equipment fails for some reason.
Okay. What made you actually get into the safety side of the hunting? Where did it spark from?
I guess just looking into it and seeing the need. You know, when you see the number of statistics, you know, I seen one that between like 2000 and 2007, there was 46,000 injuries in tree stand accidents. I mean, that's a big problem.
Right. So just maybe an article explaining how many accidents were sparked your interest of maybe trying to save some lives in the hunting industry.
Exactly.
Very good.
Did you, the minute you read that, you say, I know what I can do? Or
no, it was more like that's a problem and somebody needs to fix it. You know, and the more I looked into it, the more gaps I seen in it, and I looked at products that were out there and how they worked, and you know, one-time use thing. Well, how do you test that? How do you know it's going to work? That when I really need it, it's going to work. And so those kind of dismissed those, and then you know that all kind of attributed this product would have to do this, this, and this.
It'd have to be reusable.
Yeah, it had to be reusable. Right. It had to be, you know, hold this much weight. And, you know, I went down like a checklist, but it had to be simplistic, too, where anybody could use it. It's not rocket science. And like I said, during a fall at any time, if you grab the webbing, you can stop yourself. So you had the ability to control the fall. You're not just at the mercy of, in any of the units that were self-contained, it was that way. If you fall in any one of those, there's nothing you can do. Mm-hmm. If it's coming fast, you're just going to go fast. Right. At any time, I can stop my fall. Right. So this was just finding a problem and trying to solve it the best way to try and fix all the problems that were out there.
So the product itself is made of some heavy-duty metal steel plating.
Well, the plates are 6061 aluminum, and they're anodized.
Gotcha.
So that's your airplanes are made out of aluminum.
Gotcha.
So that was the lightweight part of it. And then they're anodized, which, you know, anodizing is the second hardest material, second to diamond.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that gives it the surface strength. Yeah. The webbing, like I said, it's polyester, heavy-duty, marine-grade quality. Yep. So it's going to get wet. And that was another thing, you know. Well, a couple of them said, well, this can't get wet. I'm like, if I'm hunting with it, it's going to get wet. Right. You know, it's just...
He actually tested it one day in our backyard. We have a sand set up, and he tested it. It was so cold and so windy. I said, I will watch you from the living room window. If you have a problem, I'll come out.
Maybe.
But he did 2 or 3 jumps, and then he came back in, and I said, well, did you have any problems with it? And he said, no, but my hands were sticking to the rungs of the ladder, so I couldn't keep testing.
Right.
So
right. It gets cold, you're getting sweaty, and now you get a problem.
Well, it was so cold that his hands were literally freezing.
Like
you were losing your
like sticking your tongue
them.
to the flagpole type of thing.
Right.
So that's what he was into at that point.
And then the screws that go in the middle, those some are stainless steel, some of them are, or maybe they all are.
There's 2 different models. Okay. There's 8 shoulder bolts on the unit itself, and then there's 1 adjustment bolt. The shoulder bolts just perform the box, and in there's 4 rollers in there, and those rollers are allowed to spin. Mm-hmm. And you control, with your adjustment bolt, you can control how fast those spin, and then the cam actually starts to belay the system to slow it down. Yep. So that's basically how it works, and that just controls the rate of fall that the webbing goes through the unit, and you're hooked to the unit. Right. So.
And there's some adjustments that you make for different weights. I think what we talked about, if you're going to have one for a kid, you want to have a special tune it for a kid.
Right. When people order them right now, typically we can find out if they have a special order for either a longer strap or a lower weight or a higher weight. And we actually test them. Wayne will make the modification to the unit for a youth model, and we include the bolt and the roller that you would take out so that as the child grows, they can actually put that bolt back into the unit, and the unit will actually grow with the child.
Gotcha.
So,
did you have any trouble finding the materials to make your straps and everything?
No. I tried several different brands, several different kinds. We're buying it from the mills, so you're getting 300 foot. And the one came in at Gaylord. It was a big box. I don't know. It was like 1,500 feet of solid webbing.
Gotcha.
And then we cut them to 30, 40 foot. They come standard 30 foot, but we can cut whatever length and sew it. And we just told them what we wanted. We wanted the marine grade quality polyester.
Gotcha.
And because those had the break weights that we wanted. Those were all 5,000 and above.
Right. So once you got your materials and you got this thing built, what's the brutal testing that you've put this Wingman through?
All right, let's take a coffee break. And when we come back, we'll talk more with Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus, and we'll get into how they tested rigorously the Treestand Wingman. Folks, I want to tell you about one of the best cups of coffee I've had in a long time. We met up with the Hunter's Blend coffee guys at the ATA show in January. One of them is a longtime listener of the BBR, and Hunter's Blend Coffee is now our new sponsor. Coffee makes the hunting world go round, or so it seems. Whether you're heading out the back door to your favorite blind or jumping in the truck for a long drive, coffee is what got you up and at it. Now there's Hunter's Blend Coffee, brought to you by hunters who care about and support the lifestyle we all love. Hunter's Blend Coffee is purchased directly from small family farms in Nicaragua and northern Thailand and is changing the lives of many in these communities. Not bad for a cup of coffee. Hunter's Blend Coffee is smooth, rich, and will awaken you any time of the day. Go to huntersblendcoffee.com and check it out and order some for yourself. You'll be glad you did. And be sure to ask for it at your local hunting store. If they don't carry it, send them our way. Hunter's Blend Coffee. We're hunters too. And now back to our interview with Wayne and SHAUNA Borgardus of the Treestand Wingman.
Can you walk us through some of the tests that you've done outdoors and how many times you've used one particular unit?
Yeah, I had my original unit that I used in Harrisburg and all the other shows. Harrisburg's a 9-day show. It's kind of like a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, over the 9 days, I did 2,506 falls over the 9 days.
Right, so when he says Harrisburg, that's the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Go see the Treestand Wingman there.
Yeah, we're scheduled to be there again this year.
Very good.
Yeah, it's February 3rd to the 12th, and we're in the Archery Hall, booth number 1200.
Perfect. Very good.
And that same unit I've used for about 2.5 years. I ended up doing over 8,600 falls with that one unit. Now, I do replace the webbing every 5,000 falls in it, and the rollers about every 500 falls.
Okay.
But the cam, the top and bottom plates, all the bolts, they're original. So
gotcha.
The average hunter should never wear one out.
Right.
And we manufacture the straps, so even if they need a new strap, they can always send it back. We can redo it, reassemble it, set it for their weight, and send it back.
I figure if you wear one out and you're the average hunter, you're sleeping too much in a tree stand.
You're pretty clumsy.
Either that or maybe you should hunt from the ground.
Yeah, very good. So Jim brought up a point earlier. He was walking in, and Jim Keller was sitting in with our deer news. He brought up a point that you had this unit at a particular Ohio show, the Ohio Deer and Turkey Expo, and how many jumps did you do there in a couple of days?
I think that was like a 2.5, 3 day show, and I think it was 500.
Yeah,
it was a little over 500.
500 jumps, 2 days. The unit held up strong.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah,
very good. That super interesting. That been test and tuned for that many jumps. Not something that any hunter ever would. I don't want to do one jump out of it, let alone 8,000.
Well, that's like at the Great American. Guys would come by and want to know how many I'd done. So we just kept a little tally board there.
Right.
And it was kind of funny because there'd be like groups of guys, 6 or 7 guys here, and they just stand there and watch. And they're watching to see if I'm switching the harnesses or what I'm doing, because I can't possibly be doing that many falls with one unit. And I am, just one fall after the other.
Right.
So
that's very good. That's something that's separates the Wingman from the other harnesses out there. There's just nothing like it.
So one question that I have that you kind of touched on is there any kind of expiration or recommended maintenance on it, like similar to some of the safety belts that you get or the safety harnesses? After a certain point, they want you to replace parts. Is there any maintenance that you've come up with?
Yeah, as far as the Wingman, that's basically for liability's sake, and we do the same thing. Every 4 years we recommend that they send them back, and we can put new webbing in it if they want to upgrade. The other thing about it is if you bought like number 2 off the assembly line 3 years ago and you wanted a Pro Series this year, you could send that back, and I could send you your model back, a Pro Series, So everything going forward, if we make any adjustments, they're going to be upgradable. So you'll be able to have the latest and greatest, just paying, the difference in the price of them.
Gotcha.
So nobody's stuck with last year's model. You'll always be able to get your latest and greatest. If the webbing's showing signs of wear or fatigue, you definitely want to, I do recommend that like 3 times a year I take mine out, my personal one that I hunt with, and I do a few falls. I'll put it up in a set of rafters, go up like 6 feet, hold on to the webbing, and I'll do 2 or 3 falls and make sure everything's working good. I look it over. And if I was hunting with it and I had a serious fall where it actually, it deployed and lowered you to the ground, you want to look everything over and make sure that everything's, the way it should be.
Well, you want to check all your equipment after each use,
and this is the most important thing. I mean, everybody likes their $1,000 bows and how fast they go, but when it comes right down to it, this is the most important. Your harness and this are the 2 most important things you carry into the woods.
Right. So have you done any testing with ozone and on the harness nylon?
Yeah, I have an industrial heavy-duty ozone generator that works with a wire EDM, and it takes the mold out of the water in the wire EDM, and I use that on my clothes, and I also use that on my wingman in the harness, and I have not noticed anything, and that's the first I've heard about it, but we can definitely do more testing on that.
Yeah, with just large volume of ozone seems to be destroying
elasticity and the elastic of certain products.
Okay,
we weren't sure if it had played into polyester.
The polyester, the marine grade polyester, I don't assume that it would, UV doesn't affect it at all.
Right.
I've had straps that we've left outdoors for, I actually tie my miniature horses on some leftover ends of the webbing.
Right.
And those straps stay outdoors 24/7 through rain, snow, everything, and they haven't degraded a bit.
Good.
So I don't really.
I don't think it's an issue. I think it's more the elastics. For I don't know. Everything has an elastic in it in some fashion. A lot of hunting clothes or things like that.
Yeah, and I don't think it would have any effect on the metal.
Right.
No.
No, I wouldn't think the metal would degrade at all. What I noticed about your straps, and I mean, sometimes you get the straps that come with like a ladder stand that you're supposed to wrap the straps around the back of the tree. I've had those degrade in a year, but your stuff is different than that.
It's heavier weight.
Heavier weight. It seems
heavier break weight.
More durable. It's made of some other product that is not part of the standard stuff. And why on earth that stuff would degrade in a year on the standard ladder stand package, I have no idea, but this is different stuff.
Yeah, it's the type of material that it's manufactured from. Her son got stuck in Erie in the big snow there a couple weeks ago, and the only thing I had in my truck was 2 of the straps you're talking about off of a stand I took from my deer stand. I hooked them up and tried to pull his car out. They snapped instantly.
Yeah,
it was like, wow.
It snapped before any of the weight of the car actually got on it.
I moved a stand this year from a stand I put up last year, and I went to pull it up at the new spot or to secure it, and just pulling them securely, snap. Both of them snapped.
Yeah.
Like, how is that a safety product?
Well, the thing is, with straps and things on stands, I think every year to 2 years those should be replaced.
No,
They just degrade too much. I mean,
it's not worth your life. I mean, if you got the wingman on you though, you're
still
hunt them out till they break.
Yeah,
you got a descending
it's
device. I'm kidding.
One of the things we looked at, and one of the initial designs Wayne had, was some straps that you could actually connect the wingman to the ladders as you were going up. But then we did research on the ladders, and those rungs will not withstand
a fall.
Right.
They will not. The rung would have pulled away. So that's
that.
why we went back directly to the tree or to a lifeline.
Yep.
And so you have to remember that we use the maximum standards that we can find, but a lot of the manufactured stuff that's out there uses less stringent standards.
Yep.
So, I mean...
And that's an interesting point, because if you use this product, it can be used in 3 different ways or thereabouts that I've seen, and maybe more. You guys can weigh in here. If you're using a climber or if you're using sticks, right, you can wrap the harness around the tree with the loop, and then the product itself comes through the top loop.
Yeah, the tree stand becomes your tree strap itself.
It's your tree strap. It's the strap that you would normally have strapped on. And initially I was like, I don't know if it gets too loose, is it going to fall? No, it's solid.
Yeah.
If you put it on right. I put it on wrong initially. I don't get it. So I had to go play with it and practice it once. I would recommend practicing.
Yeah,
it.
Absolutely.
Because as simple as it is, well, you know, a fairly seasoned tree climber messed it up the first time. But once I got it, it was perfect, and it was so strong and so secure, and it slides easily up the tree as you go. I noticed.
Yeah.
Like there's no give. There's no like obstruction. You got to get it to the right height for the tree you're on, or the right width.
Yeah.
But then it's nice and easy. It's move your stand up, slide it up. You stand up, slide it up, and it just all the way up.
Exactly.
The other way that I've seen it used, and I have used myself, is, as you said, with a lifeline type apparatus,
right,
where you have a line from the top that you've already secured all the way down the bottom that you probably use your Treestand Wingman to put it there in the beginning. But now you click onto that, so even if you fall, even if you get stuck, the lifeline is there to keep you from falling to the ground. But with this, it will slowly,
Right.
you can control it.
Right.
Yeah, on the lifeline part, when I get up to the top of the stand, I will actually take sometimes and run a tree strap through the loop, unhook the prusik knot, and then I can take that loop and put it to the far side.
Right.
Reason being for that, if something happens in the stand or on your climbing sticks, that way you're going to fall away from everything. It'll pull you away, and you'll go down the opposite side, so you're not falling down into the ladder or into the sticks.
Right.
And actually, one of my original webbing actually had the tree strap with one of them tree strap connections.
Yep.
And because we could go down and so light in weight, I was worried about a kid going to a tree and putting that in backwards, and it just pulled back out when he fell
the
into
buckles
it.
is what he's
So
talking
with
about.
this, once you put that through that loop and you start climbing, you're hooked up.
You're hooked up.
You know,
You're attached.
that way I figured if a kid in a climber, he's going to be hooked up the whole time he comes up and down. There's no way to get out of it.
Right.
So
That bottom falls out, you're still okay.
yeah, you
Yep.
can take your top and bounce down till you get to the bottom and go back up.
This prevents a lot of things. So you're supposed to attach your bottom to your top, so that if it slips on the tree, that bottom isn't falling to the bottom of the tree.
Sure.
Because you have no way to go get it. With a tree stand, you actually have a way to go get it
Yes,
safely.
absolutely.
That would be one of the worst case scenarios, because that should never fall to the ground. You're supposed to attach the top to the bottom of the climber.
Right.
The apparatus itself, it has one hook eyelet, right?
Yeah.
Where you put your carabiner onto that from your harness and it works with all kinds of harnesses, obviously, because if the harness has a strap to a carabiner, it can hook onto the eyelet.
Exactly. And, because there isn't the impact force that you would normally have in a fall just with your harness hooked to the tree, your harnesses get less wear and are more efficient and durable. A lot of tree stands will come with, I call them spaghetti harnesses.
Yes.
They're just tiny little straps and all of that. And when we went down to have testing done, we took several of those harnesses with us. And the tester looked at them and said, I don't usually like to use those harnesses because a lot of times they'll cause a failure and then I'll have to fail you.
Right.
And we said, well, we're not really worried about it. He told us to bring 5 units down and 5 different harnesses. And during the testing, I basically stood there and rethreaded the same one over and over while he was preparing the dummies, because we just never had any trouble with it. And he was completely amazed at that. In fact, when we got to the 5th test, which was the Superman fall for the 300-pound dummy, he said, I really want you to use a different harness and a different wingman. And we said, well, okay. And we had no problem with that either. But
And I could see where that could be a problem. As good as the wingman is, it's still, you have that other component that you're not in charge of.
right.
Yeah.
The hunter is, to make sure that the rest of your safety equipment is still in good working order.
And it's important, too, that when you're practicing with your wingman, you get the opportunity to make sure that your safety harness is adjusted properly for you.
Right.
So I get a lot of guys telling me that they can't get their harnesses over their hunting gear. They have too many clothes on. The fall rescue device, the little strap that you're supposed to put your foot in, most of those are attached to the back of harnesses.
Correct.
And I've had a lot of guys tell me, once I get all my gear on, I can't reach it.
Yeah.
If it's back there, I have to take it out and put it in my pocket. And I said, well, you can take it out and put it in your pocket, but if you have a wingman, you won't need it.
Right.
So.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yep. How much does it weigh?
1 pound, 6 ounces.
That's crazy.
That's
1 pound,
with the
6
bag.
ounces. Right.
Yeah.
With the bag.
With the bag.
See that?
And 30 feet of webbing.
1 pound is worth its weight in gold. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
What's your life worth? You know?
Right.
It's selfish if you
Right.
don't have some kind of falling device.
It doesn't add any weight to your hunt. And we're always, as hunters, you're always trying to be a minimalist in a lot of ways if you've got a long way to go. Or, I mean, it depends on where you're going, I guess. But
Right.
where I hunt, sometimes I go for a long walk.
All right, Joe, we've talked about the Treestand Wingman. We've got to get into a whitetail hunt of some
Okay.
sort.
I'm
I'm
down with
itching.
that.
I'm so itching to get into a whitetail hunt.
Do we have?
Tell me where we're going. Who's up? Who's going on a hunt with
Give
us?
me yours. You're dying to
Well, as I said before.
Gentleman Wayne is.
Yeah, he's a gentleman.
tell. I don't have
That's-
any good stories.
He wasn't a gentleman in this story, though. I hunted before I met Wayne.
Okay,
and
so we're in
Pennsylvania.
we're in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And he had me up in a nice little ladder stand that was leaned up
A wooden
against
one, yeah.
nice straight tree. It was a wooden stand, and he let me use his fancy gun because we were just dating then.
I was still
and,
trying to impress
and he
her
was
back.
still
Courting
trying.
her-
He
courting
was
her a
still
little
trying
bit.
to impress me. So, and of course, I hadn't got onto this business that
It must have worked though. That's the thing. It worked.
Putting
Good
me up in the
job.
air
Like that.
without any safety harness was really not good for me. But at any rate, we went out first morning, and
What was the weather like? Tell me what the weather conditions were like.
it was cold. It was
3-4 inches of snow.
but it was.
So we're
clear.
midwinter.
It
Midwinter.
was. It was
Yeah.
clear that
It
day,
was-
though. There was not a lot of wind, but the tree swayed a little bit.
Very good.
Just a little bit.
The fancy gun. It must have been very good. She remembered this whole hunt.
The fancy gun, that I was worried about that because
Right.
I knew if I did anything to this gun, that was the end of this relationship.
Yep.
But I sat there for probably 15, 20 minutes. I mean, Wayne had left. He was going to some other stand.
So he just hauls you out there,
Quiet
drops
he,
you off,
he
and says,
dropped
"Here
me
you go."
off and said, "Get up
Okay.
there and sit down, and I'm going to go. I'll be over here." Well, I thought over here wasn't too far away,
Right.
so I'd sat there about 20 minutes, and I heard something, and I kind of stood up on the stand, and I looked, and from behind me there was a nice little 8-point buck just trotting down through. He wasn't in any particular hurry, and I had plenty of time to get on him, and I made the shot.
So what would you think? Okay, I'm going to stop you right there for just a second. Were you thinking, yeah, he's going to hear me shoot. He's just right down the
I did think that.
He's going to hear
I
me because he's
thought,
just right over there somewhere.
He's just right over there. He's
This is
going
gonna
to
be great.
He's going to hear me, and he's going to be so impressed because I killed this deer.
Right.
And I made the shot, and when I made the shot, that tree stand just wobbled around, and I swear it went a foot down under my feet. I mean,
Right.
and I thought, oh my God, thank God I did not drop this gun.
Right.
Good
That, all I was worried about was I didn't drop the gun.
So
Not-
at this point, you just shot a deer. You've got a tree stand that's very unsturdy, and you've got your potentially future husband's fanciest gun he owns because he's courting you and trying to get you to stick with him. So he hands you the finest.
Yep.
So where do you go after you've shot and you're in the stand?
I watched this deer, and he went right down to the little logging road that was only about 50 feet away from him, piled up right there.
Oh man, that's perfect.
So I sat there for a few minutes because I know better than to get out of the stand too fast. And I sat there and I watched, and he was down. He wasn't going in. So I thought, oh, cool. I'll just go down there and I'll sit by him because one of the first deer that I ever shot was taken away from me by another hunter in the woods.
Very sad.
And so I was concerned that I had finally killed a buck that I thought was pretty decent.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays I wouldn't, he's just a young fella. But I thought it was a pretty decent buck. I thought it was going to impress my boyfriend. And so I was all shaky, and I got down out of the stand, and I went over to the buck, and I got my tag out, and I filled it all out and got it attached to the antler and everything.
I can see the excitement in your hands.
And
You're
I
very excited.
I was so excited. I was like, dang, it's early. First thing I shot this deer. And so I sat there and I waited. We didn't have cell phones or anything with us, and I thought he'll come,
heard the shot.
and he'll go get the truck, and we'll get the deer, and we'll get everything done here, And so I waited, and he didn't come, and he didn't come. Well, pretty soon his brother came up over the hill with his little truck. I flagged him down, and I said, Russell, I said, I don't know where Wayne is. I said, I shot this deer. And so he helped me, and we got it out and got it up in the back of the pickup.
Did you ever consider dating the brother at this point?
Well, on
fine rifle or not.
On that day, so it kind of gets worse, though.
Okay.
Because he takes me in his truck up to where Wayne's truck was, and so we get the deer transferred over, and I sit and I wait and I wait and I wait, and it's probably noon. He finally comes walking out, and I said, why didn't you come when I shot?
Right.
And he said, I thought you missed. You only shot once.
Truth is, where I was probably 300 yards back, and I had a climber.
Right.
In PA and gun season, if you climbed down the tree every time you heard a shot, you'd never get up a tree.
Right.
So,
yeah, I guess that makes sense.
You know.
So let's get into it. So this is earlier in hunting times before all this technology was available. What kind of hunting clothes was you in them particular years? What did you use for hunting attire back then?
Let me see. I think it was sweatpants over long underwear and jeans.
That makes sense, yes. And I'm assuming today that you're more modernized on your camouflage and using modern clothing.
Well, actually, I don't really do a lot of hunting anymore.
Well, that's okay.
After we got married and started the farm and
cut you off of that, huh?
Got all the horses.
She killed the only deer we had.
Right,
so.
I get it.
Well, yeah, I did get some dirty looks because I was a newcomer in the area,
Right.
and it's like, what's this girl doing coming in here shooting our deer? You know?
Very good.
So I thought, well, maybe I better just let the boys do it.
Do you remember what caliber was the rifle that you were shooting?
7 mag.
Weather-B mag.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
It was the Alaskan model with
Bolt
the muzzle
action?
brake. Oh, yeah.
Bolt action. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. You talked about a hunt that maybe you had a deer taken from you.
Mm-hmm.
Can we touch a little bit into that just because it sparked my curiosity, and it seems like it would be a story that it's meaningful to you because I can see the feelings you had, the emotion you had when you talked about that. That was your very first deer.
Well, actually, that one wasn't my first deer. It
Okay.
was the second one. The first deer I ever shot, somebody else had shot the jaw off of it. It was a button buck.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so I dispatched that one, and nobody came and took it. It wasn't real big. But I was hunting on some private property, and I was in a stand, kind of a wooden walk-up stand, and I was using, again, a borrowed gun. I was a single mother at the time, and I was out hunting for meat.
Right.
And I saw this deer come through, and he passed in front of me, and I shot, and I knew I hit him. So, again, I know you're not supposed to get down and pressure them, so I waited. I did not hear another shot. So I finally got down out of the stand, and I went to where I followed the tracks to where the deer was piled up, and there was a guy there already gutting him.
No kidding.
And he said, this is my deer. He said, I was shooting out of this stand over here. Well, the stand was on the opposite side. And I looked at the deer as it laid there. And the hole in the deer on my side was small. And the hole on his side was large. And I don't think that's the way ballistics work.
Right.
So I knew it was my deer.
Right.
But he was a lot bigger than me. And
Right.
he had a knife in his hand, and I just said, this isn't worth it. So
Right.
I walked away, and when I talked to the landowner later, they said, this will be dealt with. But I
Gotcha.
never had any further.
That's interesting. It's sad that sometimes that it works out that way, and
Yeah.
there's not really much you can do about that situation.
No.
It just more or less it starts a bigger fire if you try to fight it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think if it was some kind of record buck or a trophy buck, it'd be a
But it
different
wasn't.
situation. Right,
It
right.
wasn't,
Right.
you know.
Very good.
So.
Get into Wayne's story?
Yeah, let's touch a little bit into a story from Wayne, and we'll go. Let's go with one of your memorable hunts.
I'm not sure. A lot of my hunts, I'm basically always by myself most of the time.
Well, tell them about your fun trip to Alaska.
Or the
Doesn't have to be a whitetail
Nope.
hunt, does it?
The
Absolutely
South
not.
Dakota one.
Well, you could tell them that one. That's definitely interesting.
We went out, can't remember what year, it was about 10 years ago, we went out to South Dakota and Wyoming turkey hunting. And we're after Merriam's. We'd got Rios and eastern birds. And so we were going to go out there. And me and my brother, we flew out there, rented a vehicle, and we were going to go hunting. And we got birds the first day in South Dakota, so we were going to hunt Wyoming the second and third day. Excuse me. So we get up in the morning, we head out this mountain pass, and we're driving out in Wyoming in the Black Hills, and we come to this little river, this little gate in the thing, and there was 2 snowmobile tracks going out through there. So I'm thinking, well,
He's
the road,
driving a Subaru Outback, mind you.
Very nice.
Super Outback.
it was an all-wheel drive, so to speak.
Right.
So we take these snowmobile tracks out through there and go out probably 4 or 5 miles, and then the 2 tracks crossed. Well, the Subaru Outback slid down into the ditch. So there we were stuck at about noon with no way out.
You couldn't find more skinny pedal?
No, we were right on the frame, so we tried to dig it out for like an hour. Well, then we seen on the map that it showed, like another 3 or 4 miles, we were going to get onto another road. So we walked until, I don't know, it was about 3:30, and we still hadn't come to that road. And my brother wanted to keep going. I'm like, no, I know in 3 hours at dark we can be back to the car. I don't know in 3 hours if we can be picked up at dark. So there was probably about a foot of snow in that area. So we hiked back to the car, and we kept, turning it on, letting it warm up, and then all night. Well, in the morning, we dug out enough that it froze up. So we got back up onto the tracks and then got out of there like noon the next day. What I didn't know was 2 of my other buddies were back at camp, and we didn't come back.
Meanwhile, back in Pennsylvania at 2 o'clock in the morning, SHAUNA gets a phone call
that I was missing, and they were having the patrol out looking for me. So I didn't know any of this was going on. I didn't think my friends even cared that we weren't back. So we were heading back up, and I seen some turkeys going up this hillside with my brother. He's like, no, I got to go back, and we got to get a shower and this and that. So I said, well, you take the vehicle, come back at noon. I'm going hunting. I didn't fly out here, not to hunt. So he left.
10 o'clock, I get a phone call. Well, we found Wayne and Russell, and I said, well, that's wonderful. Let me talk to Wayne. Well, he's not here right now. I said, when he comes back, tell him to call me. So, but I worried from 2 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock the next day because I didn't know what happened.
Right.
So she had visions of me being strapped to a vehicle, being hauled back.
I didn't know whether his brother
car.
shot him. I didn't know whether they were in an avalanche. I didn't know
you
they
were
were
getting
trying...
limited details.
Yeah, very limited, and I didn't know that they were trying to drive a car on a snowmobile path in the middle of the woods. So.
Not my greatest moment.
That's interesting.
I've told them all that from now on, if he gets lost, not to call me unless they have a body. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Jay, you want to launch off the 10 rapid fire questions?
I
think that
10
we'll
rapid fire questions.
do it. We'll ask a question, maybe start with you to answer, and then go to Wayne.
Okay.
And maybe the next question will go into Wayne and then you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have to look at the first one. What's your number one hunting tip?
My number one hunting tip?
Yep.
Sit still.
It's a great one.
Mine would be probably patience and persistence.
Very good.
All right.
Is there one item, I'm trying to remember these off my head just so I can do this. Is there one item that you cannot hunt without? Wayne, we're going to start with you because it seems like you're the most recent to be hunting. There's something you can't go to the woods without?
It's my wingman.
Perfect.
I will not climb a tree. If I get to the tree and I don't have it, I'm going back home.
Very
I
good.
won't climb.
If you were still hunting, would there be one item that you couldn't go without?
Well, I definitely would have a wingman if I was going to be in a tree, but I would say a knife.
Very good. Very good.
All right.
What's your biggest pet peeve in life? Something that just drives you bonkers.
Something that drives me bonkers. Hearing the same story over and over and over again, whether it's in the media or on the news or just from people. Just
You've already heard that one.
Yeah,
Very
exactly.
good. Wayne, your biggest pet peeve?
I don't know as I have one.
I can tell you what his is.
What's that?
Okay.
My wife moving things.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Putting things away.
That's a given.
It is a completely disorganized
Have
shop.
you ever seen that post that says
I have
don't
everything
usually
where I know where it's
I
at.
don't
it's at.
usually
Somebody
lose
moves
things,
it.
but if I do, my wife moved it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Okay, you're right.
That's it.
Very good. Wayne, I'm assuming that you're above 40 years old, so I'm going to say the Wayne of today. What would you tell yourself, knowing what you know today at 20?
Life gets better as you get older, I think. I've got grandsons now, and I'm starting to hunt with my son-in-law.
Don't forget your granddaughter.
And I've got a granddaughter, too. And just, we were out with my one grandson, and we're teaching him how to shoot and stuff the other day. And it was just thinking back to the people who did that for me. It was just really important.
Assuming you're around 30 years old, what would the 30-year-old today tell the 20-year-old knowing what you know today?
Don't take things so seriously. Tomorrow's a new day. You can always start over.
Very good. Very good. Question number 5. You're at a hunting event, a convention. You're walking through a lobby, or at the hotel at the hunting convention. You're walking through the lobby, and somebody says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that?
I guess probably a tool and die maker, inventor, husband and grandfather, dad. That's all.
Very good.
Guess who I am.
I guess I'd say I'm a businesswoman and
Very good.
wife, mother,
Very
grandmother.
good. Question 6. One of my favorites because it's always interesting. Wayne, what'd you have for breakfast this morning?
I had eggs, ham, sawmill gravy on biscuits.
I'm eating with him tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
I don't
I'm following
starve,
you.
No.
Yeah. What'd you have?
Pretty much same thing,
Very
except I
good.
didn't do the sawmill gravy.
Very good.
So,
All right. What is sawmill gravy, by the way?
It's got the sausage chunks and stuff
Okay.
in it.
All right.
Yep.
I think.
Sure.
he doesn't cook much.
I'm just on the eating end.
Right on. Right on. You get a blank canvas, a billboard. It's a blank canvas. It's on the side of a major interstate in PA. What would you put on that blank canvas of a billboard? Be a saying, a phrase, anything of interest.
Be kind to one another.
Very good. Same answer for both?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
that's
good.
a tough one.
Very good.
Yeah, you could have a Treestand Wingman on it, I guess.
Very good. Very good. If I say the word successful, who's the first person that pops in your mind and why?
Well, we were this morning at the CEO banquet, and I just was sitting there thinking of, everyone talking, and I would have to say he had a pretty rich life, and what he had done and what he brought to the ATA. I was real impressed with that. That would be a good.
One of my favorite people that if I could sit down with somebody would be Norman Vincent Peale.
Okay.
Power of positive thinking.
Very good.
And
Yep.
Okay. Very good. What's a typical day in your life look like?
Sunday's church. Any other day, it's work. So
Very good. We'll take that. We
Some
need
days-
a little more detail, but we'll take that.
Some days it's work after church.
Right.
For me, let the dog in, let the dog out. Feed the horses. Do the, wingman stuff.
Gotcha.
Let the dog in,
Yep.
let the dog out.
Very good. The horse has got to eat twice a day.
The horses eat more than twice a day when it's cold.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Yeah.
they're my babies.
Typical hunting day in your life.
get up at 4, get ready, go out, get in the stand. Don't get out till it's dark. I'm
Gotcha.
there all day unless I happen to get something.
Do you pack a
Like-
sandwich?
No, usually not.
No kidding.
I'm all focused on hunting, and like she says, I never shoot anything till the last week. So
Very good.
I'm there.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's,
That's why we don't hunt much together anymore. I didn't know about the not eating and sitting all day long. I mean, I know you have to sit still, but this man could sit through a hurricane.
right. I'm pretty solid out there, but I got a radio flyer wagon, and I drag all my snacks out there with me.
Mm-hmm.
With the wingman, I just lower myself down and get a
Well,
snack.
you got the
and climb
little
back
bag.
Up.
You can, pack all your snacks in the
Right.
Oh,
bag.
you
Right.
could hook them up on the bottom loop.
Yeah, very
Well,
good.
there you go.
That wraps up 10 rapid fire questions. Very good answer
Very
on
good.
that. And
Guys, where can we find more information about the Wingman if we haven't covered it here today?
You can find our website at treestandwingman.com. We're on Facebook. We have Black Ash Outdoor Products has a page, and we have a YouTube channel, Treestand Wingman. So
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you for supporting our show. And I think we're going to be able to push this product out quite far and get more exposure for you. Where do you want to take the company from here?
I want to see everybody that climbs a tree using a Treestand Wingman. I don't want to hear these stories anymore.
Yeah.
It's really sad. It's really hard to listen to the stories of parents who've lost their kids, of dads kids who've lost their dads. We found my dad laying at the bottom of the tree. It's awful to listen to that. I mean, if you have any empathy in your body at all, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to climb, use a wingman.
Right.
Because you can always get down and you'll live to hunt another day.
It's a great birthday present, Christmas present,
Father's
Easter
Day,
present,
Mother's Day.
anything.
Yes.
It's a
yes.
great present
Yes,
for the
it
hunter
is.
in your life.
It is.
So,
And I had a really big push this year at Christmas of people telling me I'm buying this for my son, daughter, whoever, I want them to have it. So, and there's people that don't hunt that can see the value in this
Yeah,
for
there are other
for their loved
professions,
ones that use it,
Yep.
you know.
Yep, very much
Very
so.
good.
Awesome. Guys, thanks for stopping by.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate Wayne and Shauna sitting down with us for a little while and going through the steps that they went through to develop the prototype and then the final product and bringing a very needed product to market. And again, we don't always feature a particular product on the show. In fact, usually we don't. But in this case, because it's such a different device, and different meaning that it covers so much ground. There have been other devices like it that have tried, but this one is lightweight. It's incredibly well built. It's not going to inhibit your hunt in any way, and it will most likely save your life if you do fall. How can we ignore that? How can we ignore trying to save a life or two of our brethren hunters and telling you more about this product and really exposing everybody that listens to this show to Wayne and Shauna to show that they're great people and that they're really filling a void here for a desperately needed device that will slowly descend you to the ground amongst everything else that it does. So the cost is worth every cent. It's not that much money. Right around $100, I don't know how you go wrong. So we're looking forward to working more with Wayne and Shauna and seeing where this product develops. And I certainly hope everybody that's listening to the show goes out and gets one. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, and I'm going to refer to a few questions I've had over the last few weeks of whether or not to leave your tree stand out in the woods or not.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Personal preference on my end, I take everything down, bring it in. Not only, it gives you the option next year to reset a set that maybe you need to make some adjustments to. If you just left it hang there, you'd probably just climb back up and hunt the same stand. But, not only that aspect of it, but as far as weather and the sun and the rain and the snow and the conditions and, the Mother Nature will tear a stand up faster than anything. So a safety aspect comes into play when you leave your stands and leave them hanging in the tree or ladder stand or a climber or whatever you got out there. Even your ground blinds, the weather tears them up, and that stuff all costs money. And it's that time of year to get your stands down and bring them in and store them in a dry place. Even if you can just throw them up in the rafters of your garage or wherever you can make the effort to put them up and keep them nice. And then you're not going out and then having a cable that's rusted out break on you on a hang-on stand, or you get to climbing and the ladder sticks, one of the steps break off and you skin your leg all up and you fall. And just go out and get your stands down, bring them in, and some people's got a lot of stands, and I understand that. I've got quite a few myself, but I try to make room for them in a dry storage area and get them out of the weather. That's rough on them, and it's definitely a safety factor. So get them stands down.
Gotcha. Great tip, and something I often overlook. But yeah, I'm with you. I need to get out there and go grab my stuff. Very good. Very, very good. So, Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you? Or you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.